Hi, my name is Shantae McLaughlin. I am 40 years old and I am looking to sue Grady Hospital, Fulton County Women's Detention Center, Fulton County Sheriff's Department, possibly Clayton County Sheriff's Department, and also Georgia Regional Hospital and Dr. Wynn at Grady Hospital. So, 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with schizophrenia, schizoaffective, and bipolar disorder, and psychosis. Dr. Wynn at Grady Hospital was my doctor that was overseeing my mental health. I was in a relationship, I was looking to get pregnant, and she handles the women and fertility for Grady Hospital. I was on Geodone medication.
Mommy, watch on the TV?
In a minute. I just got my son back today. So Dr. Wynn actually went and I was on Geodone medication. She took me off of my Geodone, told me that she was going to be prescribing me Risperidol. She actually prescribed me Zyprasidone. Zyprasidone is the generic of Geodone. She tabled me off from 160 milligrams down to a 20 milligram, then took me off entirely. When I'm off medication, I walk the streets talking to myself. I turn into complete homelessness, poverty level homelessness, sleeping out on the streets homeless, and she knew this. When we first started our sessions, I was a U-Bar's media buyer with a $1 million budget. I met Big Al from the U-Bar because I was his marketing and sales rep at Streets 94.5. So Dr. Wynn was familiar with my past. She was familiar with my work history, and she took me off of my medication with no real reason. She said that I was too high functioning and I did not need it. She didn't create a crisis management plan. When I pulled my medical records from Grady, she falsified the document saying that she prescribed me Seroquel when I've never been prescribed Seroquel. And she also said that she was having face-to-face sessions with me once a week when I've never met her face-to-face. So that's Dr. Wynn and Grady Hospital. I was arrested one time and sent to the 13th floor of Grady. She sent me some Haldol, which is a medication for schizophrenia. My diagnosis is bipolar II disorder, but Grady had me misdiagnosed, and Haldol makes me violent. So I kept getting into fist fights. I got into like 6 fights while I was pregnant. Got arrested. I didn't have an arrest record. Before being off meds, I got arrested one time 10 years ago for criminal trespassing when I first got diagnosed with mental health. So because of Dr. Wynn's medical negligence, which the statute of limitations is 2 years, however, falsification of medical documents, I believe that the statute of limitations is a little higher. She pretty much ruined my life. I had no prenatal care. I could have lost my children. I could have been killed. I could have been raped. There's all types of things that could have happened to me while I was literally sleeping out on the streets while being 7 months pregnant. I believe that since Dr. Wynn falsified my medical records, then there's a lawsuit because she had that we were meeting face to face. She had that I was on Seroquel. She had all of these different diagnoses for me when I've never met the woman in person. The reason why I want to sue Fulton County Sheriff's Department and Fulton County Women's Detention Center is it kind of runs hand in hand. So first off, there was an AJC article back in April about the Fulton County Women's Detention Center and its treatment of women with mental health. They had over 200 cases. It was through the Georgia Advocacy Office. There's a prosecutor who has 2 clients, and they were talking about how the conditions made mental health worse because of the 23 hours on solitary confinement and the 1 hour out. In 9 months, I was incarcerated with the Fulton County Women's Detention Center for 9 months through the Fulton County Sheriff's Department on charges that weren't even my charges. When I made it to Georgia Regional, they eventually docketed the charges, but while I was there, I didn't get a lawyer, one. I didn't get a phone call in 9 months. I had 9 showers. I was denied hot meals while I was pregnant. I was fed peanut butter and bread or bologna and bread. I was shackled. My stomach was shackled. When they would shut off my water in the bathroom. Well, in my cell, there was the toilet and the sink. They would shut the toilet off. They would shut the sink off. They would have, in 9 months, I didn't go outside for fresh air one time. I was kept in the cell from anywhere from 7 days to 14 days without leaving the cell. They would, if they took me out of the cell, they would have me walk to the front in handcuffs, and they would put me in a barred cell by myself, and then they would handcuff me again and transport me to Rice Street Jail.
Go outside.
No, it's raining. They would say hi. You gonna say hi? No? Okay. They would transport me to the Rice Street Jail, where they would put me in one of the closed doors with just the glass with the little slot. When I was at the Fulton County Women's Detention Center, there was mold, there was rust. During the time of me giving birth, I had little to no prenatal care. I was pregnant when I got incarcerated, and And with that, Gregory is actually one of my triplets. 2 are still missing. They said that I was hallucinating giving birth to 3 babies. They've never looked into it. The director of Grady Hospital was there when I was giving birth to the 3 babies. I named all 3 with the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department handcuffed me to the wheelchair as they wheeled me into the hospital. My legs were wide open. They had male officers with me. When I made it into the delivery room, they shackled me and handcuffed me to the bed with male officers in the room while my legs were handcuffed wide open again. After giving birth, within 48 hours, they had me back in general population with me still bleeding. They put me back in the cell with 3 pair of underwear, 1 uniform, 1 set of bed linen. Once I soiled the linen, the mattresses and things, they refused to bring me anything else. They may bring me sanitary napkins with no underwear, underwear with no sanitary napkins. They still weren't feeding me hot meals. I didn't get my first hot meal until the 7th month. And I remember it was Mrs. Jones, one of the police officers. Her name was Mrs. Jones. She gave me some cabbage and beans, and that was my first hot meal. During my pregnancy, I didn't get any hot meals. They had the thick chains around my belly. One of the male officers, who I can't identify, almost broke my arm. He just came out of nowhere, slammed me into the wall while I was still pregnant, twisted my arm and twisted it behind my back and slammed me into the wall again. And then one of the other male officers came and pushed my arm up. And I still have problems with this arm. It pops in and out of place. One of the female officers, after being in the cell for about 2 weeks without being able to come out for fresh air, to watch television, to take a shower. I didn't get any showers after I gave birth. 0 showers. They didn't even let me out of the cell. And they didn't give me any medication. So after being in the cell, there were about 8 female officers who came into the cell. I remember being delusional and saying that some were volunteers, some were real police officers. They said, how did I know? And I said, some seem fake, some seem real. And if they didn't stay away from me, I was going to stab them. And I picked up a plastic spoon, not a spork, a spoon. And they started laughing at me, and then one of the officers just started macing me, and she wouldn't stop. I hit my head on the steel bed. 2 of the officers grabbed me, ran me to the front to wash my eyes out. And so I want to sue for cruel and inhumane treatment, police brutality, violating my constitutional rights and my civil rights. The fact that they may be selling babies on the black market. I had triplets. 2 are missing. They said that I was hallucinating and delusional, and I never had triplets. 2 of the other women who were incarcerated with me gave birth, and they were on the phones trying to find their babies. I remember the 2 because when they wouldn't bring me water or a cup to drink out of, the 2 women would bring me cups. They'd put a cup of water in my little hatch of my cells so that I could have something to drink so that I wouldn't be dehydrated. I actually got pregnant in December of 2015. I gave birth in November of 2016. So I was overdue. I had one ultrasound when I was at Grady on the 13th floor. No, sir. One moment, please, Gregory. So I remember being on the 13th floor, and they had a handheld ultrasound, and they told me that they heard 2 sets of heartbeats and that I was having twins. There's nothing in my medical record showing that. There's nothing in my medical record showing triplets. They said that I conceived around February or March. I wasn't having sex in February, so I couldn't have conceived in February. And they just left me in my cell until I was ready to have the baby or babies. And so that's why I want to sue the Sheriff's Department and the Fulton County Women's Detention Center. The Sheriff's Department was charging me with terroristic threats, felonious, aggravated assault, and possession of a knife in the commencement of a felony. They said that it was because I was homeless. I told them that I had a place to stay at the time, but because of me not being on my meds, I didn't have anywhere to go, so I kept sleeping on the streets, and I kept losing my keys, kept losing my ID, but I did actually have somewhere to go. I didn't get a lawyer. I didn't get a phone call. After 9 months, one day they were like, "You're being released to Georgia Regional." And they sent me to Georgia Regional. My defects case manager, who was bringing me my son, since they sent me to Georgia Regional with the HIPAA laws, they couldn't report to any of my defects attorneys or my case manager that they were sending me to Georgia Regional. So I almost lost custody of my children, or my son Gregory. I just got reunification today at court. We've been going through this for the last year and a half since I've been free, and he was almost adopted out. The only reason why he wasn't adopted out is because my mom just so happened to have saved the case manager's phone number, and I was able to call the case manager. So for all of those reasons, I would like to sue the Sheriff's Department and the Fulton County Sheriff's Department and the Atlanta Women's Detention Center. So Grady Hospital, the reason why I want to sue Grady Hospital. First off, I'm not sure if it's the hospital or the Sheriff's Department where there's some level of conspiracy about stealing kids. I know for a fact that I had triplets. I named the triplets Gregory Sterling McLaughlin, Malcolm Aaron McLaughlin, and Melina Olivia McLaughlin. The sheriffs actually held the babies with me. So to verify this, then we could pull a log of which deputies were in the room with me and have them question. The director of Grady Hospital, because with me being bipolar 2 with psychosis, that's my diagnosis, I thought that Beyonce was my cousin and Prince was my uncle. And the director of the hospital heard me yelling and screaming and cussing people out because at the time I didn't want to be seen by a white doctor. I wanted a black doctor or a Middle Eastern doctor as my OBGYN or as my obstetrician. And 1 minute, Gregory. And they kept telling me that they didn't have one on staff and I would have to take whatever doctor. So since they had the HIPAA laws right in front of me, I kept going through my HIPAA laws and telling them everything that they were doing to violate my rights. I told them that I had the right, because they were trying to force me to have a cesarean also, and I told them that I didn't want them cutting on my stomach. Instead of saying that I was in mental health crisis, which everyone realized that I had a mental illness, one of the doctors said that I was lying. How do I know this? It's all in my medical records. He said that I was lying, and since I was refusing mental health medication because they were trying to give me Haldol, which is a schizophrenia medication, not bipolar medicine, and it kept making me violent, and I refused the Haldol, they refused to give me any pain meds. So when I was giving birth with a Benadryl drip. They didn't give me any epidural, so I had bad back pains to the point where I started on a whole nother set of delusions. Because of the pain, I kept getting more and more delusional, and they wouldn't help me. They had me handcuffed. They had one arm free. Each of my legs was handcuffed open, and one of my arms was handcuffed. And the director of the hospital, Rhonda Scott, came down. She told them that I needed to stay in the hospital at least 3 days for my boys to be circumcised. I had 2 boys and 1 girl. She also said that she had black doctors on staff, and if that's what I was requesting, then that was my right, and I should be able to have a black doctor to take care of me and my children. So since then, when I called Director Rhonda Scott's office, I talked to a Denise in the office, and she was trying to gather information. And now when I call, or after that when I call back, without Denise's last name, they won't patch me through. To ask for Director Rhonda Scott, they won't patch me through. To call any of my doctors that were involved, because in my medical records, there's no delivering doctor listed. So when I called every doctor that was listed around that time, there's only one that could possibly be a delivering doctor, and they said that she doesn't deliver babies, but that's the only one that I didn't talk to. And they told me that even if I wanted to thank her for helping me to give birth to my children, I would need to have my lawyers contact her. They refused to give her any kind of message. I asked for the hospital video footage. My old public defender from Gregory, she requested the video footage, and they said that they had it from the hallways. However, they were unwilling to release it without a subpoena. When she said that she could get a subpoena, they said that they weren't sure where the video footage was. She would have to come down herself and pull the video footage. They weren't sure if they recorded over it. But before, when they initially were just talking about a subpoena, they said that they had the footage. Then, in returning to the police department, there was an investigator looking into the police logs, and because they thought that the lawyers were going to sue them, they were saying that they weren't sure about which officers were in the room, but there is a log. Grady Hospital, there were 2 other women incarcerated with me who had given birth at Grady, and they couldn't find their children. In my medical records, they had me giving birth on the 19th. They listed my son Gregory's name like twice. And then they had the notes on the 23rd where it looked as if I was in a hospital until the 23rd. But I was back in general population on the 21st. So they were falsifying more documents. So that is why I'm looking to sue Grady Hospital. So the reason why I want to sue Georgia Regional is just to piss people off. I was at Georgia Regional for 9 months on charges that weren't my charges. They kept telling me that I kept failing the competency test because I didn't know my charges, and I kept telling them that those were my charges. So then they dead docketed the charges. So while I was at Georgia Regional, so the father of my children is a fairly known person in Atlanta, and he was on the news, and so I said that's the father of my children, and they put in my medical records that I was being delusional. They knew. I kept talking to them about having 3 kids. They kept telling me 3 triplets. I have a 14-year-old also. They kept telling me that they didn't say anything until I was about to be released from the hospital. That's when they said that there weren't 3 babies, there was only 1, and I was delusional. My defects case manager came to Georgia Regional, told them that they were trying to terminate my parental rights, and they had a family that wanted to adopt my son, and I had to be in court. They told her that they could not transport me to court for that. I was subpoenaed to be in court twice, and they refused to transport me, and I almost lost my son. It's been a year and a half. I've been going back and forth on the TPR, and today I finally was granted back custody of him. The case will be closing in February. But before that, I could have lost my child. Then, while I was at Georgia Regional, backtracking a little, Clayton County was the original ones who arrested me. And when they arrested me originally, it was justified. But when Fulton County picked me up in Georgia Regional, no one communicated with Clayton County. So when it was time to call Clayton County for me to be transported back there, I had a warrant out for my arrest, and I had a bond of $7,000 for a criminal trespassing charge, disorderly conduct and obstruction of justice charge. So Georgia Regional knew all of this, but they didn't communicate to me, and they knew that I had a warrant out for my arrest. So after my charges got dead docketed from Fulton County, and they realized they were just holding me on some bogus charges, the case manager, Brenda Balagru, pulled me to the side, had me voluntarily commit myself, had me fill out the paperwork in the form, and my question was, since I'm voluntarily committing myself, can I voluntarily leave? And she told me that I couldn't leave, but that they needed to make sure that they were covered, so they needed me to fill out that form, voluntarily commit myself. Then she was like, they were trying to get Clayton County to dead doctor charges, and I said, well, Clayton County can't, because I actually have charges there where I'm supposed to go before the judge so that they can dismiss my charges and throw them out. So they tried to force me to go into this group home setting because they were able to get me set up on Social Security. And when I refused, they did eventually just send me back to Clayton County. So my reasons of suing Georgia Regional is, one, just to piss them off. Two, because I almost lost my children behind their lack of medical knowledge, their lack of professionalism, their lack of legal knowledge. Like, I was subpoenaed, which means I'm supposed to be in court, not you can pick and choose which court procedures you send me to. And the fact that there was a warrant out for my arrest because they just didn't communicate with the jail system. So that is my reasons of wanting to sue Georgia Regional. So last but not least, Clayton County. I'm not sure if it's the sheriff's department, if it's Ricky Brown, who is the judge, but when I first got arrested in Clayton County, my friend Willie Ross, I was at his house. I'd been arrested several times. I've been to the hospital. I had no prenatal care. I'd been sleeping outside. I've been house hopping from friend to friend. I had an apartment with a roommate, couldn't find my keys, couldn't find my ID. I was just messed up. So Ross had me arrested, and my charges were criminal trespass and disorderly conduct. The officer that came in, Officer Peace, Willie Ross testified in open court that Officer Peace brutalized me. He came in while I was pregnant, slung me by my wrist into the sofa, grabbed my hair, and pushed it into a pillow. So when I was fighting, like kicking and moving to get him off of me and to get him to let me up, he actually handcuffed me. And then when I went to court, he wasn't there. I asked him if they ever Mirandized me, because they did not read me my Miranda rights. They did not give me a phone call, so which violates my rights to several of my rights. You know which rights. So Willie Ross was my witness, and Judge Ricky Brown he just kept me answering questions for about an hour, and I was in and out of delusions, but he was fishing, and some of the things that I was saying, he was using some of my contacts against me. Like an example, I had a delusion and I said I was the head of BMF. So then he said, well, do you know anyone from BMF? And I said, yes, I know Bill Marshall. I watched the movie. He taught me how to read credit when we worked together at Stone Mountain Chevrolet, which is the truth. So he was like, who else do you know? So I was like, well, Eldrin Bell, the former chief of police, is my son's mentor, which is the truth. He actually put in a letter of recommendation when my 14-year-old Bryce Williams went through the Fulton County Leadership Program. I'm friends with his daughter. So he was asking me all of these questions, and then he wanted to see my stomach. He told me I wasn't having one baby, I was having at least two. But he kept me talking. He told me that what was going to happen is I would need to get stable on my meds. The whole process will probably take about a year. But when everything happened, he promised me that I would have no kind of jail record. He said my record would be all the way clean. Any of my previous arrests wouldn't show up, and I wouldn't have to worry about having anything on my record. So after a year and a half between Georgia Regional Clayton County and Fulton County, well, actually a little more than a year and a half. When I got sent back to Clayton County, I had this terrible public defender. She told me to just say yes, so I just said yes. When they sent me back to Clayton County has this little weird thing where, although the reason of me being arrested was that I wasn't on my medication, so it had me acting out. So what they did, when Georgia Regional sent me to Clayton County, the medication that I had with me was a medication that they dispensed to me. So once that medication ran out, they reordered a couple of them, but they didn't follow the directions. So when it was time to give me my meds, they might forget this medicine or only give me 1 pill instead of 3 pills. So after almost 2 years of getting me stable on my meds, I was back slightly unstable because they didn't give me my meds as prescribed. Take that over there off my ottoman. Thank you, sir. So they didn't give me my meds as prescribed. So when it was time to go to court, I wasn't properly medicated again. So the public defender ended up getting me NOLO charges. Although I had sat in jail for a year and a half in the original case, I mean, we went through the full trial, the full hearing in about an hour. But everything was decided upon that I would sit in jail and my record would be cleared up. Although I was delusional, I wasn't in my right state of mind, and he took advantage of that fact. We still had some kind of agreement that I wasn't supposed to have a record. They had me plead NOLO, so I have a misdemeanor for criminal trespass and disorderly conduct and obstruction of justice, which looks like I was fighting the police, which in a way I was trying to get him off of me. So that's me wanting to sue Clayton County. One for police brutality. He had on body camera, so it should show him slamming me into the sofa and halfway suffocating me. That was the question before to the judge when I said that there were 3 officers called to the scene. If he felt that I was violent, he should have had the female officer handcuffing me and the female officer handling me instead of him trying to pat me down, him trying to slam me into the sofa, and the other 2 with their body camera in their newer vehicles, and him. And he wasn't in the courtroom. Officer Peace wasn't, but the other officer was. The other officer, I forgot his name, he said that he didn't know what the Miranda rights were and that he did not read the Miranda rights to me. So I don't understand how I have charges when I was never Mirandized or given a lawyer, or they offered me a lawyer the day of, right before going into the courtroom, although I'd been incarcerated for about a month at that time. And then there was a lawyer that came to me in jail and said that they would be returning in 3 days. They never came back, which is a public defender's office, which is a whole nother case. But Clayton County just dropped the ball. So there's a possible lawsuit there. Thank you. I'm Shantae McLaughlin, and I appreciate your time and you looking into this matter for me.